Hi Chris, this is my assessment 2 case study training program. So first slide, all about heart rate monitors and going through the benefits to start with. So the first one is it gives you an internal measure and removes the guesswork. So if a player says they've been working, at the maximum intensity, you can actually see if the heart rate data corresponds with this. Low cost, very accessible, especially the big clubs nowadays. Most of them have, the budget to be able to afford heart rate monitors for every player. Team training, again, every player can have their own individual heart rate monitor, especially apps nowadays such as Polar. You can see everyone's, heart rate data during a training session or game. And then you can obviously also break it down to see certain individual players during those sessions or games. Limitations, one of them is heart rate lag. So for example, very short sprints, agility work, it's not going to be appropriate to use or wear a heart rate monitor. And then cardiac drift can also play a part, especially if it's like hot conditions, dehydration, stress, and caffeine can also play a part in this. So what are heart rate monitors appropriate for? So continuous aerobic base work, lactate threshold work, and VO2 max work. Heart rate monitors can be great for all these to make sure you're actually hitting certain intensities. And they're not going to be appropriate for your shorter sessions, like I said before, your sprints, your agility work, and strength sessions. This is because of heart rate lag, so you're better off pairing heart rate monitor with your GPS systems and your RP just to get an overall better full picture. So next slide is working out the anaerobic threshold of the athlete. So we've got all the test data on the left, and then I made a graph on the right. We've got heart rate on the y-axis and then speed on the x-axis in meters per second. You can see the anaerobic threshold or the deflection point is roughly around 168 beats per minute for the athlete at 3.5 meters per second. This is where the heart rate begins to increase disproportionately relative to the speed. When I'm working out these training zones for the athlete, I use the Carvona method. So firstly, you have to work out the heart rate reserve, which is heart rate max minus your heart rate at rest. Obviously, we've got the data in the table for the athlete. So it was 182 minus 49, which gave us 133 beats per minute. And we could use that to work out the exercise intensities for each zone. So I've gone for 5 zones. So for example, zone 1 is 50 to 60% of heart rate reserve. So we can work this out by doing 133 times 0.5 and plus in the resting heart rate, which is 49. So for example, zone 1 was 116 to 129 beats per minute. And you can see the rest of the zones as well, the ranges. And then as the athlete's anaerobic threshold was 168 beats per minute, see this works out in zone 4 for this formula. The next slide is about the expansion of training zones. I chose to use 5 zones. I did this because it's simple to use and I feel like you can be a bit more specific with your training. For example, some models like to combine zones such as zone 3 and 4, but if you've got 5 zones, you can be a bit more specific. So zone 1 targets recovery and blood flow. Zone 2 is your aerobic capacity. Zone 3, tempo work. Zone 4, your threshold, lactate tolerance and clearance. And zone 5 is your VO2 max. Okay, so next slide is going to be a bit of a summary, as well as adding how each zone should feel and session examples. So again, zone 1, 116 to 129 beats per minute, targets recovery and blood flow. RPE should be 1 to 2, very easy. And second example is 30 minutes on a stationary bike. Zone 2 is 129 to 142 beats per minute. This targets aerobic capacity. RPE 3 to 4, comfortable and sustainable. And an example would be 40 to 60 minutes. It's a zone 2 S. Zone 3, 142 to 155 beats per minute. This is your tempo work and aerobic efficiency. RPE 5 to 6, challenging but sustainable for a long time. An example session, 40-minute run alternating between 5 minutes at moderate pace, zone 3 pace, and 2 minutes of easy jogging. Zone 4, 155 to 169 beats per minute. This targets your threshold, lactate tolerance, and clearance. RPE 7 to 8, hard, unsustainable for very long periods, and speaking should be difficult. And example session is 5 minutes hard running, 2 minutes rest times 4. And lastly, zone 5, 169 to 182 beats a minute. This targets anaerobic capacity. Well, as your VO2 max. RP 9 out of 10 should be maximal to near maximal effort, and basically redlining, and you shouldn't be able to speak in this zone. An example session will be 30 seconds of hill sprints work, walk back down times 8, or most picture specific 6 times 6 seconds work with a 3 minutes rest. The running should be very hard. Here are my references from the slides. Thank you.